Mercedes have finally come good on this promise of theirs for over a month of having a substantial upgrade before the summer break. And we finally have seen a brand new floor emerge onto the W15 for this weekend's race in Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps. And the changes with the W15 do not end there, as they've made revisions to the diffuser, to the halo, and also to the front wing of the W15, with some of those changes being circuit specific. Now, what's really interesting about this upgrade is one, that it's very much an evolution of the previous design with certain tweaks in and around particular areas of the floor. And of course, second to all of that is, for sure, there would have been changes to the underside of this floor, and we will most likely never see them, which is absolutely fine. But just know that the team should be expecting to get probably, if they're very lucky, a 1/10 of a second out of this new floor. I think that has been their motto with regards to all these upgrades they've brought up until the summer shutdown. And across the opening half, they've gotten to close the gap to the leading teams in Formula 1 this season by around half a second, which is quite an impressive amount of lap time gains over their competitors. Now let me show you the new floor and all the updates that have been taken place across it. Now, interestingly, first of all, I don't want to take you to the quite obvious change on the floor. I want to actually focus in on the roof of the new W15 floor, as there's been quite a dramatic change to that particular area. And the area I'm actually talking about with regards to the roof is the side impact structures kind of covering. Now we see this on all the cars where the impact structure tends to have this somewhat of a bulge, which is kind of like covering it and is housing it. And this is the area which is quite interestingly had a revision with this new floor. Now, what we're seeing here is a bit of a really nice curvature in terms of a slope. It's almost like a slide, and this of course will be helping to guide and direct the airflow over this slide and down towards the outside of the floor, towards the floor edge. And this is where the second portion of the visible changes to the floor have taken place. Now, the majority of the floor edge has stayed very much the same as the previous design, but now at the front of this design is a couple of additions to it. Number one, just a little bit in front of and inboard of the floor edge, there seems to be what you could describe as a sort of turning vane, although it's not anywhere near that, but it's the easiest way in which for me to describe it to you. And this of course is going to be used as a deflector to guide the air around that particular portion and to help kind of accelerate the speed in which the airflow is passing through this particular region of the floor as the air travels in and around the floor towards the back end of the W15's diffuser. Now, also in this area, and this is much more of a substantial change, and it's going to have quite the effect on what's kind of going on within this area. And of course, I myself and you cannot completely and fully get to grips and understand what it is because we don't have any of the airflow available for us to see. But they've taken a somewhat of a Red Bull RB19/RB20 approach to the front portion of it, where they have a kind of underflick now introduced at the front of the new floor. And of course, these little modifications are just going to help naturally guide the airflow, probably with a bit more accuracy, but also I would suspect increase the volume and the rate of the volume in which it's traveling through this particular region of the floor. Because of course, if you could imagine the air for a second, the air is going through all these intricate areas and going in and around, and this, to my interpretation, is just going to increase the volume in which this will occur. Now, not much else has changed on the new floor of the W15. Everything else looks pretty much the same as the previous specification. And of course, we can very briefly talk about the underbody of this new floor and what potential changes could take place. And we have an interesting shot from the Melbourne race thanks to George Russell's huge crash during that race, in which the floor, or rather the W15 itself, landed on its side, and we got a fantastic view of the underbody of that floor back then. Of course, the W15 has undergone many different changes since then, with of course the introduction of the Miami floor, and of course the changes you see on this particular floor as well. But I think you can see kind of the areas in which Mercedes have been paying attention to, and these sorts of particular things and ideas that they may want to potentially take from competitors like the Red Bull floor. I would suspect the McLaren floor now, since they're the leading team in Formula One without a shadow of a doubt, and they just look to help guide the air essentially to the back of the W15 in a more clean manner. It's the best way in which I can put it to you. Now, of course, what does this all mean for the Belgian Grand Prix weekend? Quite naturally, we have a couple of factors in which we have to talk about how the Mercedes and the W15 is going to perform. Number one, of course, with the cooler track conditions which the team and the drivers should experience throughout the weekend, it should naturally play into the hands of the characteristics of the W15. And we've seen this at a number of races, namely, in particular, at the Silverstone Grand Prix, from which Lewis Hamilton won the race. But the overall competitiveness of the W15 as a result of the lower track and ambient temperatures help bring them a lot closer to the front of the field with regards to that. And I think it's going to be very much the same case this weekend. And second to all of that, I think just the general layout of the track should help with what the strengths of the W15 currently are, which is of course the fast speed corners, the long straights, and the kind of flowing nature of the track in of itself. And of course, we won't actually know how these cars are going to perform because we really haven't had a dry qualifying, I think, since 2021, if I'm not mistaken. So I would love for a dry qualifying. But having said that, wet qualifyings are also extremely exciting. And I think what we're going to see is a situation of McLaren closely followed by Mercedes and then Red Bull. I think Ferrari are going to be off the pace by quite a considerable margin, thanks to the drastically rather cooler temperatures which we will be experiencing this weekend. And of course, we also have to factor in how this new floor performs with the W15 at this racetrack. This could have a major implication in terms of the overall pecking order of the outcome of qualifying and of the race. I think without this floor upgrade, and to me it's quite a substantial one, you would have said McLaren have got a considerable margin over that of Mercedes, but you just never know with these upgrades. Sometimes they perform underneath your expectations, sometimes they perform to your expectations, and on the very rare occasion in this ground effect era, they overachieve and do much better than your expectations, as we've actually seen with the McLaren package which they introduced back in Miami. They were expecting gains in slow speed corners, but the actual amount of lap time that they improved by in those was far and away what they were not expecting, and at that point in the season they actually didn't fully understand why that was. So it's just going to be a case of seeing how the weekend unfolds, seeing, number one, that the floor performs at a basic level, how the data was being conveyed in the simulations, and then to see whether it improves the car beyond their expectations, or it just helps put the W15 in a better operating window for this weekend with the cool conditions. Right guys, that is the video. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, do leave a like in the video, and of course if you're new here, and have enjoyed the content that you've watched, subscribe to the channel down below, as I'm on the road to 5,000 subs. I would love to get that done within the next month or so. Alright guys, I'll see you later on this weekend with more Formula 1 videos.